Hello everybody, welcome back to Garden Goddess Tarot. I'm Thea. I hope you're having a fantastic day. Oh my goodness. So today I wanted to kind of do the first installment, which might be one of many, depending on when and how they come to me. But basically I wanted to do a little video entitled Tarot Tips from your Auntie Thea. I've kind of been compiling just a little list of really useful tips when it comes to reading tarot from someone who's been reading for a while. Like, got a good amount of experience under my belt, and there are things that I know that I'm realizing that other people may benefit from. Even like, and it's not like super practical, like, you know, if you can pick up a tarot book and have a look at meanings and ways to read cards, you know, have at it. This isn't going to be like an instructional how to read tarot video. This is just going to be a few little like tips, a few new perspectives, a few things to kind of open your mind to, or things to think about or implement in your relationship to tarot as you read and learn to read for yourself and others that might be useful for you. So like everything, take what you will find useful. Anything that doesn't land, just send it back in. You know how it works. But I have a quick little list here of just a few things that have struck me as kind of important and kind of fundamental concepts and perspectives to how I use tarot in a like client reading perspective and even in my own personal practice perspective. So it's all quite useful. It's all quite poignant. I find it kind of the core of the magic of tarot kind of lies somewhere hidden in between the lines of these things. So I'm going to share them with you today. Aren't you lucky? I'm also probably going to be fidgeting with the tarot deck just because I feel like I need to do something with my hands or else they will flail absolutely everywhere. So today I'm fidgeting with the Voyager Tarot, which I did just do a pretty hefty mod on, and I love it. For those of you that aren't familiar, this deck does come with pretty like heinous green borders all the way around and a title and a keyword on it, but I've trimmed it down to just the art. And I'm obsessed. So this is the Magician card. I've also labeled them so I can still see what card it is, so I can use it as a tarot or I can just use it as like a collage oracle. Incredible. So much fun. So I'm going to be fiddling with this today while we talk about our tarot tips. And maybe at the end I'll pull some cards, see how I'm feeling. If there's any, you know, pressing questions. Tarot tip number 1. Don't ask questions you don't want answers to. This is kind of the first thing I tell people when they start to, you know, dip their toes into tarot. If they want any advice whatsoever, I usually lead with this. Don't ask questions you don't want answers to. Because the thing about tarot is it always has an answer. It will always have something to say. So if you are not in a place where you're ready to receive that information, whatever it is, be mindful enough to know to not ask. Do not approach the cards when you're in a state where you just, when you know personally in your heart of hearts that it isn't time for you to experience that information. So it's, you know, it's a practice in knowing yourself, right? Everything about this is about knowing yourself and, you know, having the wherewithal and the mind to know when to use tarot in a useful and beneficial way instead of having it cause harm. So that is number one advice for anyone being introduced to tarot. Simple as that. Just don't ask questions you don't want answers to. Tarot tip number 2. This one's hard. It can be tricky, especially once a collection starts to accrue, as it tends to do. You trust your tarot decks. The second that you start to question or start to have a wavering faith in the decks that you're using is when your readings are going to fall apart. You have to have absolutely rock solid trust in that what you are reading are the messages that are meant for you and when you were supposed to read them. If you start to think that, oh no, like this deck and I aren't getting along, or you start to have just that feeling about a deck and you start to lose that trust, that's when the strength of your readings will just go down the tubes. So another like really big fundamental, I think that's my new favorite word. I'm gonna see if I can get it put in the dictionary. Beautiful collaboration between the word foundational and fundamental squished together into foundational. Anyway, what's one of the key concepts of tarot, and you gotta trust your tools. It's like I'm gonna do a lot of alluding to like physical labor and that sort of thing. If you do not trust the tools you are working with, it's going to not go so well. It's going to cause harm. If you are using a chop saw and you don't trust it, you're going to be prone to more accidents than otherwise, right? So it's just generally best practice to trust your tarot decks. And if you find within, you know, your collection of tarot, what you've accrued, there's some that just you don't trust, what they say to you, you don't have belief in, then maybe that particular deck isn't for you. And be free to move it on. Like, you're not beholden to them. They're just paper. They're words, numbers on card. So do with them as you will. No harm done. As we've said before, tarot exists. It's everywhere, all the time. We just write it down. You can read tarot without a deck. It's a whole thing. But anyway, just specifically trust the ones you've got and the messages coming from them, because that's a big part of being able to get the most out of your readings. As I said, the second you start to lose that trust in the way you are interacting with what you're interacting with, then that's when the messages start to get fuzzy. So tip number 3, it's very much in the same vein as the other ones. These are all kind of coming from the same place, but I feel like they are specifically separate tips as a rule. Tip number 3 is a deck is only as useful as the questions you ask it. So like I said, it is a tool. I often liken it to a hammer. Can be used to build houses, can be used to cause havoc, great harm, or just, you know, pain in general. It is not the fault of the tool what happens with it. It is up to you. You are in control. It is entirely you that is guiding this. You are just using tarot as a lens, a vessel, a portal through which to go. It is a tool. Bottom line. So whether it's used for good, whether it's used for ill, that's up to you, the user, the interpreter, the reader. So keep that in mind. Tarot tip number 4. Tarot does not cast moral judgment. This one is tricky because I feel like there's a lot of very emotionally kind of very should and should not type of readings going around, which it's bound to happen based on cards, but the tarot itself does not pass moral judgment. It will not tell you what you should and should not do. It can compare and contrast situations, but it is up to the reader to make those judgment calls. The tarot is, as itself, neutral. Every card in the tarot, and I will stand by this fact, is neutral. It does not lean, it doesn't sit in like bad and good. There is no bad cards, there is no good cards. They're all inherently morally neutral. The moral and judgment calls are what you pull out of yourself while doing a reading. And it's entirely based on the context of the reading. So the question you've asked, the cards around it, it can form kind of a judgmental direction, but there are no like bad and good cards. The tarot does not pass the moral judgment. Just remember that. It's all about how you read it, right? Tarot will energetically frame a situation, but all the judgment comes from the reader, not tarot itself. So if, like, for example, say you go to a reading and they're like absolutely reading you for filth, so to say, like saying that you've done all these things wrong and, you know, how to, you know, shift and change your perspective because where you are now isn't good. Like that moral judgment isn't coming from the cards. That's coming from the interpretation of the cards by the reader, which is kind of what you're going for. But also remember that if a reading doesn't sit well with you, it could just be a, you know, morally skewed reading from a reader, and it's bound to happen. So just keep your mind open to that, and, you know, be able to read the room. But yeah, that's a kind of a fun and tricky one, and that's one that took me a long time to kind of learn. Because especially when you're just learning tarot, you kind of were, hey, you know, this tower bad card, 2 of Cups good card, but at the same time, in the context of a question, the 2 of Cups may not be what you want to see, and the tower might be what you need. So the good and bad, the judgment, it doesn't come from the tarot. It's just situational. And situations can be seen from good and bad, like any situation, right? You can be on one side of a situation and it can look good. You can be on the other side of the same situation and it can look bad. So what the tarot is doing is reading the situation, not necessarily your perspective on it, unless you ask. So yeah, that is tarot tip. That's tarot tip number 4. Tarot tip number 5. You're never done learning. Ever. Tarot's a map of life, and life is always morphing and changing, never ending. It's loops in on itself all the time. You're not going to be done. You can't just like read a couple of tarot books and be like, I know everything now. It's not how tarot works. Every time you learn something, you learn that there's 10,000 more things you need to learn. So the more you learn, the more you need to learn, and that's just how tarot works and how life kind of works in general. And again, there's a mirror for life, etc., etc. But that's just the way tarot goes. So the way you read will morph and change. If it doesn't, something is off, right? As you grow as a reader, the way you read is going to change, and that's just natural. That's normal. Don't feel like, if you feel like you've come to your cards and it's completely different than before, nothing's wrong. That's how our relationship with tarot goes. You're going to grow, you're going to change. The way you read cards is going to grow and change, and that process is never done. That's why experience is so valuable. That's why time and effort and energy put into this practice can only add and deepen the way the readings come out. So there is value. This is another example of holding two like seemingly contradictory ideas in your head at once, right? Experience is totally valuable. Surface level perceptions of that aside, the experience is, it can't not be valuable, right? But at the same time, if you get a reading from someone who's never picked up a tarot deck before and they read those cards for you, that reading was for you, and it is just as important, as like equally valid, neither holds more weight than the other, than a reading you get from someone who's been doing it for 50 years, you know? Like, those two readings, the two messages that come from those separate readings are equally valid and hold equal amounts of weight. But at the same time, the act of reading is an infinite wormhole that you can go down. So just let that roll around in your brain for a little while, see how it feels, see where you kind of land on that one, and let me know what you think. I'm very curious. The next tarot tip, this is specifically if you are reading for yourself, or I guess if you're getting a reading as well, but advice is just that. It's just advice. The cards show you what you were meant to see at the time. They may give you advice, they may not, but you, the querent, get to decide whether or not you take action on that advice. The actions, you're always, even if you do predictive readings, you always have personal autonomy, you always have control over your life. Even if you believe in, you know, that destiny, things are going to happen the way they're going to happen, that like the future is fixed, if the future has already happened, even if you believe that, you still do not negate the fact that you have personal choice right now. You can choose one thing, you can choose the other. We can get into multiple dimensions here, or we can not. We can talk about, you know, the nature of time and what's going to happen and why it's going to happen and that sort of thing. We can argue up and down about whether or not the decision you make was always going to be the decision you were going to make or not, but the point is you still have the freedom to choose. Because we live in the present and the future is in the future, we always get the freedom of choice, and it's wonderful and it's great and it's exciting and it's the best part about being alive. So just remember, advice is just advice. Tarot readings are guidance, they're direction, they're reassurance, they're empowerment. You can use tarot for any number of things. But at the same time, just remember that that final decision always is yours. Whether you take the advice of the tarot or not, still up to you. But you can never blame tarot for anything. It just exists separately. It can't make decisions, but you can. Remember that. The next question, we're getting a bit even more outside of our brains and heads now. Tarot is not what's on the cards. I touched on this one a little bit when I was doing one of the indie deck videos recently. Can't remember which one, but just specifically, as I've said before, tarot exists. Tarot is everywhere. Tarot is a system. Tarot is a framework. It is a structure. It's there, and we put it on the cards, but the whole concept of tarot doesn't specifically live inside of a tarot deck, if that makes any sense. Each card has its own energy, right? Its own archetype, its own, you know, energetic signature, so to speak, just to keep it as vague as humanly possible, because tarot decks can be very, very different from each other. But each of the concepts that the card individually represents on its own exists off of the card. And the tarot card is just kind of grasping at its essence and putting it down in like a tangible material place. Very like Page of Pentacles, very bringing it into the real world, right? So we can use it in a tactile and material, three-dimensional kind of way. Four-dimensional if you want to throw time in there. But the essence of that card is everywhere, and you can use that to go deeper. So the best way to get the most out of tarot readings is to tap into that essence of the card's energy and go deeper outside of the card. So the cards are like little signposts. And you kind of weave your way through your life using them, reading the signs, and kind of deciding, you know, left, right, which path, away we go. But the concept of that suggestion and decision exists outside of the signpost, right? Woo, heavily metaphor laden this video is. Another fun way to think about it also is the concept of tarot as an alphabet. This is a fun one. This is a fun little brain game you can play too. So each of the 78 cards in the deck is like a letter. And each letter makes a sound on its own, but that's just what it is. It's just a sound. You have to kind of string them together, pull a bunch of them, make a word. The more letters you have, the bigger your words. The more often you read tarot, the longer your sentences. So your messages become an overarching story as opposed to just a sound, right? And also, the different tarot decks can each speak a different language. So the Latin alphabet can be read in English, can be read in French, can be read in Italian. They all use the same letters, but you may not understand them, or like they may just sound differently based on the language they are. So like Thoth, for example, could be Italian. It wouldn't be, would it? What language would Thoth be? Rider-Waite-Smith is definitely English. Marseille is French. This is too easy. We need more nuance than this, but you get what I'm saying, right? Like different systems, different takes on tarot. They're still tarot. They're still using the same 78 cards, but they're just speaking a different language. And when you start to think about how many different words and for like an infinite amount of words and phrases and sentences and stories can be created with these, I think it was 26 letters in the alphabet. Oh gosh, I hope that's right. And then when you think that a tarot deck has 78 cards, it's even more infinite than that. Like the combinations and the stories that tarot tells can be that much more even than what our language is capable of. Like think about that. That makes me so excited to just think about. So yeah, the concept of tarot as a universal alphabet to help see our way through the landscape of the world that we found ourselves in is amazing, incredible, and beautiful, and I love it. So that's fun. Okay. So I guess, yeah, we circle back to the meaning of that original tarot tip is that tarot exists, but the ideas and concepts of tarot are not necessarily on the cards. They're everywhere, but you can latch onto them in the context of a card and a reading and go deeper. So, fun. Okay, and we're gonna do one more. We're gonna top it there because I don't want this to be forever, because I could keep talking about tarot until the cows come home. The last one is kind of just like a lighthearted, kind of fun, just a reminder to kind of check oneself as well. This one took me a lot of meditating to kind of come around to, because I think this might have been a little personal shadow for me for a while, because I get a bit snarky about things, but I think ultimately there is no such thing as a bad tarot deck. Which is hard. Because I think, like, I have an idea of what I expect out of a tarot deck, but basically if it's 78 cards, it's automatically cool. It can be used for what it needs to be used for. As we've said, the system of tarot exists. We just write it down. So if it is a tarot deck, it is automatically cool. And you may personally feel like one is better suited to your needs than others, but I think the more tarot decks that exist, the better, even if there are some that I don't necessarily resonate with, if you know what I'm saying. So again, this is hard because I could sit here and be like, oh, this one for some reason does not align with exactly what I think. or want, but at the same time, my mind can change. Everybody's mind changes, and it's like another question of perspective, right? Tarot deck exists. Which way are you looking at it from? Which perspective are you seeing it from? Your judgments on a thing or a person or experience or whatever say more about you than they ever would the thing that you are making judgments on. So I think I've stepped back and I've come to realize there is no such thing as a bad tarot deck. If each of those 78 cards are there, it will do the job. So in the same vein, hold on, we're going there. There's no such thing as the best tarot decks. The best deck does not exist. So if you are on a quest for it, which I feel like I was for a long time, maybe like cool ones jets a little bit. Because if you have one, that one could be the best. You just need to find the perspective that looks at it in that way, if that's what you want. If you want the best tarot deck, then make it the one that you already have, because that's way easier. Great perspective to have. But, or the quest is always fun. If one is the kind of personality that sits nicely in like a night space of the courts where you are driven, you are constantly on a quest for something, that quest itself gives you purpose and fills that spiritual need in yourself, then go for it. Again, not passing moral judgment, just saying that that's what it is. If the quest is what is fulfilling you, then you go do it. You look for that best tarot deck. But just know that you may not find it where you think it is. But have fun, you know? So, yeah. No such thing as a bad deck. No such thing as a good deck. There's only tarot and not tarot, and everything else is that weird concoction of perspective and experience and influence and this weird, like, ethereal version of what we have in our minds is cool, and it's so fun when you find something that aligns with that. And what it does is it lights you up, and that alignment kind of can project you into the direction that you're going to go, but at the same time, a deck that doesn't resonate with you can do the same thing too. So it's a whole thing. Good and bad are just really weird perspectives that have kind of really been adopted by modern society to kind of, it's weird. I don't want to go into a big tangent about control and being able to predict behavior and that sort of thing, but just know that perhaps the best tarot deck in the world you've already got. So fun to think about. Anyway, the things I think about in my spare time. I pulled a card from the Morgan's Tarot this morning. Actually, I pulled 2 cards because 2 came out. You're actually sitting on top of the deck right now. I've got you propped up on it. So if you're feeling a lot of that, like, what's going on kind of energy, I'm sure it's entirely because you're sitting on top of the Morgan's Tarot. But the cards I pulled were this one, which I think was the main one, and then the second one is like a little secondary guy. This one is, here, I'll show you up close so it focuses. Have a read. This is Try to Relax. And this is the main reason I love this deck so much, is the like fun play on words, a little bit of an entendre there. Try to relax. In the act of trying, one is not relaxed. So it's a trick. Trying to relax is a futile goal. You won't get there. So instead, don't try. Relax. And then the other one I got was Monday Messages, which is keep an eye on Mondays, your old moon days. There's a message coming, which is fun and silly. It's the only card like that. There's no any other day of the week to keep an eye out for in the deck. So I also just whipped it across the room. Where did it go? Maybe I'll be a joker and post this on a Monday just to really mess with you. Would I do that? Probably not. I don't know. Maybe I would. Anywho, with that being said, all of that heaviness slapped out of the way. Those are my tarot tips. Those are the tarot tips from your Auntie Theia from far too long reading tarot cards and thinking about them way too much. But just that poignant information that I thought it's good to share. Maybe you needed to hear it, maybe you didn't. Maybe you think I'm off my rocker. That's entirely possible. But I'm gonna pull a little couple cards, just like with no context whatsoever. Because chaos from the Voyager Tarot. I just wanna see what's going on here. I'm gonna go with 3. Oh, first off, I grabbed the 10 of Pentacles. Look at that. 10 of Worlds in this deck, so very much the material world in which everything resides. Like personal legacy, satisfaction in the like tangible, real life material sort of way, in combination with the Child of Swords. So in this, would be the Page of Swords energy. So very much, oh, there's a new idea about this. One's mind is open to new things, messages. What else is on here? I've been, since trimming this, I've just been able to like leap right into the cards. The border, I was tripping over the border on these, but when they're free, you can just like, you can jump right in a lot more easily, and I love it. But yeah, there's a little kid like holding his hands in front of himself, as if seeing them for the first time. And what they are. What are you seeing when you look at your hands? It's light? Is it energy? How come the space between the atoms in your fingers doesn't whoop? Hands, man. Anywho, so yes, that guy's there. And then lastly we have the Devil, so another earth card. So 2 earths and an air, which is nice balance. A little bit, I'd say so. Capricorn energy. We've got Silenus is on here too, a little sculpture of him. But yeah, just you know, fun, chaotic energy there. And so that mixed with the 10 of Pentacles and the new ideas of this Page of Swords energy is very much like chaos. like very systematically joyful chaos. Yeah, there's some mushrooms on here, a little goat, obviously a goat. We've got Saturn, of course, rules Capricorn. Yeah, a fun time in the material realm. You're looked like it's gonna be okay. It's gonna be fine. You know, play around a bit, have some crazy ideas, indulge in the material experience, and learn everything you can about it while you're here. Fun. Okay, interesting. Okay, so those are a few bonus cards for today. Thanks so much for being here. I really appreciate it. I gotta go, but I'll see all you fine people in the next video.